Good morning, and from the northeastern United States, this is Mortal Dilemmas. I apologize for the delay. My work schedule has changed each week for the last month, still at it 6 days a week, and I've been sick. I thank you for sticking around and tuning in. Today we will hear a small collection of paranormal and glitch in the matrix stories from folks just like you and I. Enjoy, and happy spring. My son and I moved to the United States from South Africa in June. We have been living in the same house since we got here. My son is 12 years old, heavy into gaming and YouTube. Over the last week, we have had random toys just appear in his room. On Friday night, he said he heard something fall, as if from the ceiling, and in the morning, there was a Barney the dinosaur lying on his floor. Last night, he told me he heard a car rolling, and this morning, we found a Hot Wheels car on his floor. I found out from the renter that the choice was between us and a couple with a 4- and 6-year-old. I wonder if in another timeline they got the house and are wondering where their Barney and toy car are. Last week, I spent 5 days with my ex. I had lived with him and his mom for over a year, and also worked with her. We were fairly close, and she passed unexpectedly in her bedroom, a week or so after I had left him and moved out. The first things I experienced were things going missing. Some of this I can explain, but some I just can't. For example, my phone went missing when no one else was in the house but us. We didn't leave the house that night, and we never found my phone. It was just gone. Another thing that I, him, and his sister all witnessed were a pack of cigarettes disappearing and then reappearing on his bed several minutes later, after we had all searched there several times. Shit like this happened almost every day I was there. Honestly, I thought I was crazy at one point. Next is the change in vibes. I had never felt scared in that house before. Anytime I was left alone last week, I was terrified and paranoid as hell that something was about to go down. That feeling never left the entire time I was there, and Friday morning the house ended up getting raided. I won't get into that, but that feeling that shit was about to go down constantly did not fade. I don't know if the feeling was a warning or what. No idea. My main experience was very odd and scared me to death. I had been in his bedroom cleaning, and my ex was upstairs in the bathroom for a while. He's very loud, and he had not come downstairs for a long time. I know this for a fact. One of his friends was out in his garage, and I also know for a fact that he was not in the house when this occurred. So the bedroom door is set into the wall, and between the wall and the door is a fairly large crack you can see into the living room through. Lights were on in both rooms when this occurred. As I was cleaning, I suddenly felt like someone was standing outside the bedroom door. The feeling was almost unbearable, as I knew no one was out there. I ignored it, though. A few minutes later, I happened to look at the door, and I can see through the crack very clearly. I see someone sitting on the floor in the living room, angled with their left half facing the door. I can see their face so clearly that I see their glasses. This person looked similar to my ex, but off somehow. They were looking down as if they were looking at a phone. I take a step back and open the door, and no one was out there. I immediately walk upstairs to my ex and asked if he had been downstairs recently. He said no, and I told him what happened. Later, my ex's friend came inside, and I told him what happened. He told me that when he slept on the couch when he was crashing there a few times, he woke up to go pee or go to the kitchen, and swore he saw my ex's mom standing in the dark upstairs or in the kitchen. I cannot see her doing that. I don't know if what he saw was really her. It terrifies me. A few days later, I told my ex's sister what happened, and she said one day she heard her mom's voice yelling, asking her a question, but she couldn't make out what she said. I have massive goosebumps and tears telling this story. I've had several experiences throughout my life, and had recently been thinking it's been a while since I experienced something like this. My father, Bob, is a retired police officer, and his ex-partner Jerry recently passed away last year. My father recently was diagnosed with an aggressive prostate cancer and has been worried. My girlfriend had a vivid dream last night. She was sitting in a boat, across from an old man with a safari hat and a white mustache. He looked up at her and said, "Tell Bob his friend Jerry said it's not his time to come here yet." Now, she has never heard of Jerry before. I never mentioned him to her. In fact, I only saw the guy once in my life. She has never claimed to have been visited by a dead person before. That's what makes this stand out to me. She described this guy perfectly to the T. Additionally, she described the cadence in which Jerry would have spoke to my dad perfectly. As cops, they spoke to each other in a playful, busting chops kind of way. My fiancé said the way it was said was like he was trying to snap him out of despair. Kind of like saying, "You're not dying, Bob. Pull yourself together." My dad has in fact been feeling very hopeless lately. Years on the force have isolated and uninterested him in socializing. I think he needed this message. 8 hours before my fiancé called me and told me this, I had texted my dad to tell him that with his granted permission, one of his commanding officers was one of my patients, and that he said hello. This officer also knew Jerry. So as soon as I found out, I ran into this guy's room and told him what had happened. I didn't get to see my dad's reaction, but I got to see this guy's, and it was unbelievable. Pure shock, terror, joy, and hope all in one look. This adds another level of impossibility to this story. All in the same day, I just so happened to have my dad's boss as a patient. It's very bizarre. A few years back, my gran was quite ill. I had been going to see her regularly, and came home later one night after seeing her. I fell asleep. In my dream, I came to this cliché-sounding wide-open white space that seemed to be lit from somewhere, but I couldn't really see where the light source was. There was some sort of ball of light, or wispy energy in front of me, that somehow took me by the hands, despite not having appendages, and was spinning in circles with me, like you see kids doing, while it laughed. The laugh was exactly my gran's laugh, not like hard laughing at something in particular, just some sort of happy laugh. It filled the entire space. I was just running around chasing the light, spinning with it while it laughed, like it was the greatest thing ever. I felt this strong contentment from the light, like it was very much at peace. There were also other voices laughing. I couldn't tell who they were, but one sounded male, although they didn't fill the entire area like my grand's did. I was woken up from the dream by my mother ringing the doorbell to come and tell me that my gran had passed away just a couple of hours ago. I think about the dream all the time now. I've seen a lot of people report dreams of contact from deceased people when they've known the person had just died, but besides the few people I found on the Ask Reddit thread, I've not heard much about dreams like this as the person died. Let me start by saying my barber is one of my best friends. He's 48 and going through some health issues currently, so I have been spending a lot of time with him. He's not the most tech-savvy guy, so I'm posting for him. A couple of years ago he woke up to someone banging on his door around 3 a.m. He answered, and it was his friend's brother. He knew him, but not well by any means. He invited the guy in, but he wouldn't enter, and just said, "Hey man, just tell my brother I'm sorry about all the stuff that happened earlier." My barber obliged and went back to bed. It turns out, the same guy died in a car crash around midnight that night, and he knows for a fact he saw him at 3 a.m. Why wouldn't you look at the clock when someone wakes you up in the middle of the night? Apparently, the two brothers had a big falling out, and the one who had visited died in a car crash after leaving his brothers several hours earlier. He thinks his barber shop is haunted. His shop is in a relatively old building, maybe 100 to 125 years old by the looks of it, in the area of town he's in. He says weird things happen at the shop every once in a while, like mysteries shuffling, and items not being where he thought they were, but he usually chalks it up to his own forgetfulness. Not too long ago, a man came in who was about middle-aged and dressed in a suit. My barber and the current patron getting a haircut greeted him, and the man said hello back. He continued to the bathroom. After about 20 minutes, my barber thought that he had been in there a while, and brought it up to the patron who also saw him. It turns out, there was no one back there. They both went up and checked around the shop, but the only entrance and exit that's not coded was the front door, which was completely visible to them both. He said it kind of tripped him out, but he's not worried about it. We were on holiday in the Canary Islands. We are from the United Kingdom, so we were in the same time zone, which is important to the story. We landed at around midday, hired a car, and drove around 2 hours to the south of the island to our hotel. We got all our luggage out and settled in around 3 p.m. We decided to walk around the little town and then head back for food. Because of the traveling, we decided to have a nap before heading out, so we both set our alarms for 6 p.m. 6 p.m. came around. We woke up and started getting ready. I was ready first and on the bed waiting for my significant other to finish showering, doing hair and makeup, etc. It's worth noting that when she is getting ready, it can take around 2 hours. I was watching YouTube videos to pass the time. My partner was in the bathroom and shouted through asking for the time. I checked my watch and it was 5 minutes past 6. I was confused and assumed that my watch was wrong because we're on holiday and I was possibly in a different time zone. I checked my phone and sure enough it said 5 past 6, and I then remembered that we're in the same time zone as the United Kingdom, so it couldn't have been some weird glitch on my phone. At this point, I still hadn't answered my partner. She asked for the time again, so I simply and calmly said, "Check your phone." She looked, and sure enough it was 18:05. We were both freaking out. We checked our phone alarms and they were set for 5 minutes previously. Somehow in 5 minutes, we managed to wake up, both have a shower, dry, get dressed, watch some YouTube videos, and my girlfriend was almost done with her hair and makeup. But everything, phones, laptops, watches, hotel clock, hotel phone, etc., all said 18:05. It was the same day. We didn't sleep 24 hours through to the next day. For the rest of the night, we were both so confused about what happened, we weren't speaking to each other. Nothing else strange happened, but we cannot wrap our heads around it. My girlfriend kept asking me if we were dead. Can anyone explain what happened to us? I am a big outdoorsman from Pittsburgh, PA. So of course, when I decided to go to college, I had to keep in mind that having some decent woods nearby was a must. Upon checking a couple of places out, I decided to go to Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania, or just the borough. The biggest plus about going to that university is that my Uncle Fred lived up there and was a well-known name in the community. He owns to this day a framing shop right in the middle of the small town area. This was a huge plus, since knowing people like that always equals more land to put spots in. That's all I really needed to pick the college I would be going to. Edinburgh is really cool because there are a lot of old buildings and strange flat landscapes as compared to the hilly land around Pittsburgh. So it was cool to have to figure out how to scout the game I'd be going after once the season started. My main hunting area was directly behind my uncle's house. He has a beautiful log cabin that sits back off the road with woods on all sides of it. It was a true thing of beauty. When he had the house built, he actually had the gigantic chimney made of flat stones that were found in the woods behind the house. More on that later. As I was scouting the area for the first time, I came upon a few different circles of boulders in the middle of the woods. They were definitely very old. The boulders were quite big. Much too big to just be moved there for some reason, like a group of guys camping out. They must have taken 10 men to move them, and only if they had some kind of pulley system or something of the sort. There were also smaller rocks, and when I say smaller, I'm talking like somewhere around 300 pounds or more, making inner circles inside of the large boulders. Pretty crazy. I found a total of 7 of these stands throughout the property. Some of the rocks that were now part of the chimney. They simply had to be, with the amount of rocks he used on it. Also, these rock circles made a much larger circle around the woods. After a few more days of scouting with my buddy Brandon, we were sure we had our spots picked out for our first day of archery. We couldn't wait to get out there. Perfect day, too. The thing about Edinburgh, PA, is that it gets more snow per year than most of Alaska, due to the lake effect snow coming across Lake Erie. What happens is before the lake freezes completely over, the water, which is warmer than the air, pushes the clouds way up high into the atmosphere, too high for them to actually snow due to the low temperature all the way up there. The clouds then come in inland and fall back towards Earth. It takes them about 20 miles to do this. Edinburgh is about 20 miles from the lake. Anyway, on the first day of archery, which is the first week of October in Pennsylvania, there was a thin layer of snow. This is perfect for archery, because you can see deer in the woods much more easily, and you can also see if any animals left tracks. If they did, they were fresh, since the snow didn't happen too long before that. We had been in our trees for about 2 hours or so, and neither of us had seen anything yet. I had just gotten off the radio with Brandon, who was on the other side of the property, when I see some movement over to my right in the pine thicket. I then see a branch move a little bit, and see 4 deer legs under it. I readied my bow and my stance so as to make a good clean shot. Around 15 feet up in a tree, I did this very carefully. About a minute later, as I was looking for any movement, I lost the 4 logs inside of the thicket. This was expected due to the fact that where the deer would have been is a common feeding area for them, so I waited. Maybe another minute later I caught movement again. It looked as if the deer would break through the thicket into more open woods, the moment I've been waiting for. As I brought the bow up into a full draw stance, I was stunned by what I was seeing. Where the deer should have been, there was a man. A strange-looking man at that. This absolutely should not have been. If there was a man anywhere near where the deer had been, the deer would have been long gone, spooked back into the thicket. I put my bow back down onto the hook I had screwed into the tree and lifted my binoculars to my eyes. At only around 35 yards away, I could now see great detail of his physical appearance. He was rather rotund, with his belly leading the way. A white, long-sleeved shirt on with ruffles down the middle of it, just like the pirate shirt in that one episode of Seinfeld, if any of you so indulged. It was tucked into thick, canvas-brown pants, with pants being tucked into white socks directly below his knees. Further down, where his shoes should be, was absolutely nothing. He had no feet whatsoever. No calves, no shins, no shoes. With my eyes wide open, I mouthed to myself, "What the fuck?" Instead of walking, he seemed to float through the woods, going from right to left. This is when I started noticing other extremely strange things about him. I looked through the binoculars at his head. It was cocked back with his chin resting down on his lower neck. His very large, red, bulbous nose up in the air, with a sort of snobby overall look. The hair, though. The hair. It was covered by a wig that judges in England wear. A white wig with 3 curls on the side of it where his ear would have been. I noticed that he didn't just seem to float through the woods. He was floating through the woods. His arms stayed stuck at his sides, unmoving as he traveled. He also never looked down. The way his head was cocked, he could have only been looking upward. This is not the way any person or animal walks in the woods, constantly looking down and around for obstacles that you may trip over. All of this happened within a time period of maybe 20 seconds or so. He came out of the thicket from behind a medium-sized oak tree. Then when he went to the next oak, he never came out from behind it. I watched in absolute astonishment for another 5 minutes, waiting for him to break his cover so I could see him again. This never happened. I told Brandon what had just happened and was immediately made fun of. I expected that was what would be coming through the radio after I got done talking. He was saying I should have taken a picture of the only deer-human minotaur remaining in the world. I told him he wouldn't be laughing when the deer-atar came over to his tree stand and smacked his ass right out of it. Even though it was the middle of the hunt, I had to get down to see what the hell just happened. I knew that where he walked, not only would I see footprints in the snow, but it would have also been very easy to see even better tracks due to the fact that the area where he was full of muddy ground. A freaking hummingbird would have left tracks in this muddy mess. As you probably guessed, when I got over to the spot where he had been, I saw not one track from him, or a deer, or anything else that lives on planet Earth. I was utterly amazed. What happened later that night was just creepy, but due to this post being super long, I'll save that for my next post. The scary stuff didn't even begin yet, at this point on that fateful night.